The cold comes up through the soles of your feet first, gray mud, soft as wet ash, closing over each step as you press into the channel. Water seeps into every print you leave. Mist sits low on the reeds behind you. Your hands find the willow trap. You pull. This is the most ordinary morning of your life. This is a hunter on the coast of a country that no longer exists, on an ordinary late summer morning around 6200 BC. By the time the sun sets, the sea will take back the richest homeland in prehistoric Europe in a single afternoon. You will not find his name. You will find his country at the bottom of the North Sea. Today, we decode the real one. Picture Northwest Europe. 8,000 years ago, Britain is not an island. It is the western edge of a single continent, joined to what is now the Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany by a lowland the size of a country. Archaeologists call it Doggerland. This was no thin strip of land. It was a heartland of rivers, marshes, hills, and coast, larger than many nations on the map today. Tens of thousands of people may have lived across it. The team that first mapped its drowned valleys, led by Vincent Gaffney, has charted close to 23,000 square kilometers of it from the seabed. Around 6,200 BC, this is the generation in which it ends. Off the coast of Norway, the seafloor is holding a landslide it cannot hold much longer. The Storegga slide will be one of the largest the planet has ever recorded. When it goes, it sends a wall of water south, and the sediment of that wave still sits in the ground from Scotland to Norway today. And on one of those estuaries, a man is hauling a fish trap out of a channel that, 8,000 years from now, will be 60 meters underwater. The willow is rough and wet in your hands. The trap comes up dripping from the channel, heavier than yesterday, and inside it, 3 silver eels turn against the weave. You smell the reed beds before you see them, green and brackish, and under that the wood smoke from the camp where the fire was banked overnight. You were not the first awake. By the time the light came, the band was already moving. A few dozen people, all of them kin in one way or another, spread along the water in the work of the season. Somewhere behind you, a child is being kept from the deep channels. Somewhere, a partner is splitting reed for cordage. You do not need to look. You know where everyone is, the way you know the tide. You reset the trap and wade to the next one. The cold of the channel reaches your knees now. The water here is shallow and warm at the surface, cold below, and it carries the taste of salt this far inland only at the highest tides. The second trap holds a young pike. The third holds nothing, and you read the empty weave like a sentence, already knowing which channel will be better tomorrow. This is not luck. This is 40 generations of people learning one estuary by heart. By mid-morning, the estuary has given you everything a person could ask of it. Hold that thought. The abundance is the point of this story. The dugout is one trunk of oak, hollowed and burned smooth, and it sits low under your weight as you push off into open water. You kneel. Your feet brace against the inner curve of the hull, the wood worn pale where every paddler before you has knelt the same way. You move toward the fouling ground with a paddle that makes almost no sound. This is not crude work. The boat is shaped for these channels. The barbed point on your harpoon is carved from red deer bone, each tooth cut to hold flesh and not let go. In the bottom of the hull lie nets knotted from plant fiber, fine enough to take small fish, strong enough to hold a goose. The birds come up off the water in a single sheet of noise, hundreds of them, wings clattering against the morning. You take 2. You have done this since before you can remember. By midday, the band has gathered at a fire on dry ground. There is smoked eel from the week before, dark and oily and salt at the edges. There are hazelnuts roasted in the coals until the shells split, and you crack them against a stone and eat them hot. The taste is the taste of the productive season, the season that carries the band to winter. Around the fire, the talk is of water and weather and where the deer have moved. No one is afraid. There has never been a reason to be afraid of the sea. The sea is the larder. The sea is the road. The sea has always been exactly where it is supposed to be. If you are still with me this far in, subscribe to Decoded by Jack and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Here is why it matters. What you are watching is not a coastline that shrank. It is an entire inhabited country that vanished, and people sail over it every single day without knowing. The proof comes after the day ends. Stay with me. It is the water that is wrong first. Early in the afternoon, the tide begins to go out. This is ordinary. The estuary breathes in and out twice a day, and you have read its breathing your whole life. But it does not stop. It keeps going. It draws back past the lowest mark anyone has ever seen, past the old trap stakes, past the mussel beds, until there is mud where there has always been water. You stand on that mud. The same cold gray mud of the morning, but obscene now, too much of it, stretching out flat toward a sea that has pulled itself away and will not come back the way it left. The eels lie stranded in the channels. Fish flap on open ground. Some of the band walk out onto it, laughing, gathering the easy catch. You do not laugh. There is no name in your language for what the water is doing, and the absence of a name is its own kind of warning. Then you hear it, a low roar, far off, with no storm in the sky above you. The light has not changed. There is no wind, but the sound is growing, and on the flat horizon where the sea went, a line has appeared that should not be there, and it is taller than it should be, and it is closer with every breath. You turn, you run for the high ground, your feet slipping in the same mud that fed you at dawn, and you call to the ones still out there laughing, and some of them hear you in time. For the ones who reached the high ground, there is nothing left to do now but turn around and watch. The water came, and then it went, and it took the camp with it. From the ridge, in the failing light, the band looks down at a thing that has no shape they recognize. The estuary is gone. The channels are gone. The reed beds, the trap stakes, the fire ground where you cracked hazelnuts at midday, all of it is under flat salt water now, gray and unmoving, as if it had always been sea. The smell has changed. The green of the reeds and the wood smoke of the morning are gone. In their place is churned mud and torn reed, and the cold mineral smell of the open sea, pushed somewhere it was never meant to reach. No one speaks much. The light goes from gray to grayer. Below, on the new surface of the water, a few things float that you do not let yourself look at for long. You count the band. You do not count everyone you counted at dawn. A day like this one does not end the way your days have always ended. There is no walk back to camp. There is no second fire. There is no trap to reset for the morning, because there is no morning here that will look like the morning you woke into. You sit on the dry stone of the ridge, your feet on solid ground for the first time all day, and you watch the country that fed you become the sea that drowned it. That is the kind of day the evidence says happened to someone somewhere on this coast. Here is what we can actually prove. Decoded 1, they weren't cavemen. Say the word prehistoric, and most people picture a brute in furs, dragging a club, grunting in a cave. That cartoon is Victorian, and the evidence buries it. The people of Doggerland were expert hunter-fisher-gatherers. We know their toolkit from sites like Starcar in Yorkshire, excavated by Connellar and Milner, and from the seabed itself. Woven willow fish traps, dugout canoes burned and shaped from single trunks, barbed harpoon points carved from bone, flint blades small enough to set into a row, nets knotted from plant fiber. You did not just watch a man survive this morning. You watched a man read an entire estuary the way a deep-water sailor reads a coast, knowing which channel feeds, which tide turns, which weave comes up full. That is not the work of a brute. That is the work of a mind that holds a living landscape in it. Decoded 2. The wave is still in the mud. You just lived through that afternoon. Now, here is the part that should change how you see it. We can prove the wave was real, and we can very nearly date it. Around 6,200 BC, the seafloor off Norway gave way in the Storegga Slide, one of the largest submarine landslides ever found. It pushed a tsunami across the North Sea, and that wave left a fingerprint, a distinct layer of marine sediment dropped inland by water that had no business being there, found in cores from Scotland to Norway to the Doggerland seabed itself. Researchers like John Hill and David Smith have traced it. The Bradford project has mapped it. Be careful with the line between fact and inference here. The wave is fact. The sediment is fact. That a specific band stood on that mud and ran is reasonable inference, not record. But the afternoon you watched is written in rock. Decoded 3. Britain didn't lose a coastline. It lost a country. Here is the reframing that is hardest to hold in your head. When Doggerland drowned, Britain did not simply lose a beach. It lost a homeland and gained the thing we now mistake for permanent: the channel, the island, the idea that Britain was always cut off from Europe. It was not. For most of the human story, Britain was the far end of the continent, and the land between was not a thin crossing people hurried over. It was a country in its own right, lived in for thousands of years, with its own rivers and seasons, and dead. And it is still down there. Fishing trawlers still haul up its bones, its worked flint and antler, and dark chunks of its ancient peat, what the old North Sea fishermen called moorlog. Vincent Gaffney built much of the modern map of it. Bryony Coles named it. A whole human world dredged up a piece at a time and mostly thrown back. Back on the ridge, the light is almost gone. The man who woke into the richest morning of his life sits on dry stone above a sea that was a country at dawn. He does not know the word Storegga. He does not know that 8,000 years from now, anyone will care that he was here. He only knows the count is short, and the water is where the camp used to be. And tomorrow he will walk inland and keep living, because that is what is left to do. Then the light cuts forward 8,000 years to a gray flat sea under a working sky. A steel trawler rolls in the swell. A net comes up dripping over the deck, full of fish, and tangled in the catch is a dark, sodden lump of ancient peat and a single piece of worked bone. A modern hand picks it up, turns it over, does not recognize it, tosses it back into the water. No one will know his name because no one ever did. The estuary that fed him is a fishing ground now. People cross it every day, in boats, and pull his country up in their nets a piece at a time, a bone, a tool, a chunk of old peat, and most of them throw it back, never knowing they are sailing over the place where Britain was once not an island.